Welcome to the TechHub.Training Alteryx Final Leaderboard Challenge solution. In this video, I will walk you through the solution that I created after I designed this challenge. It's important to note that there are many possible solutions, and this is just one example. My first step was to use the input data tool. Here I linked it to our CSV file, and you can see that the data imported cleanly. As a matter of personal preference, I usually use a select tool immediately after an input data tool. This allows me to remove any unnecessary columns. Next, I used the sort tool. I did two sorts, first on player ascending order, and then on points descending order. Essentially, this grouped every player's events together and listed them from best performance to worst performance, as indicated in the challenge description. The next tool was the tile tool. The tile tool is important because it adds an incremental ID number based off of the criteria specified. This was important because it gave a rank from 1 upwards of a player's best to worst performance. And then the tile sequence number resets for each new player. Here we can see that Z Jones had his best performance with 150 points, and his tile sequence number is 1. It incrementally goes up until we see that he has 12 events, and then it resets on D Penman for his best performance. I then again use the select tool to remove the unnecessary tile number column and to rename the tile sequence number. So here it's nice and clean. We see that we have 13 events for K.I. Akina from best performance to worst performance as far as points are concerned. In the challenge description, it mentions that only a player's top 10 events should count towards their total points. So we will need to filter out these 3 events for this player. I use the filter tool to only keep the rows where the player's score rank is less than or equal to 10. So here we can see that each player only has their top 10 events listed. And this is true for all players in the data set. And some players, they do not reach 10 events, but it keeps as many events as they had because the player's score rank was still less than 10. Next, I use a summarize tool. Here I grouped by player name, and then I summed the points. So you can see that this should take all of these points and sum them together under the player's name, which it does here. From here it gets easier. We use a sort tool to list the points in descending order, which gives us our most scoring points to least scoring points by player. Next I use the record ID tool. This tool is similar to the tile tool in that it just adds an incremental integer for each row of data that passes through it. I was able to use this record ID as the position number since we had sorted points in descending order. Next, I needed to know for our final solution how many points each player was behind the leader. To do this, I needed to know the difference between a player's points and Z Jones' points. So I use the summarize tool to take the max number of points from this column, which is the 464.5, as we see here. Next, I use the append tool to add that number to every row as a new column. Next, I was able to use the formula tool and take the leader's points and subtract out each player's points to give me the differential. And then I again followed it with the select tool to remove the unnecessary row and make sure that the columns are in the proper order and are named correctly as well. Next, I ran it through a table tool just to prepare it for visualization into a PDF. And here I changed some of the formatting of the table, and we can see here that when we view our report, it looks like this here. So we have the leaderboard with their position, the player's name, how many points they scored, and how many points behind the leader each individual was. Additionally, this challenge asked us to create a second table with 5 columns: position, player, number of events, total points, and average points per event. Here I use the summarize tool to count each player's number of appearances from our initial data set that was sorted back here. As we can see that Z Jones had 12 events and D Jennings had 14 events, just so we could have a nice count. Over here, after we had cleaned the data to get the player's position and total points, I used the join tool to add the number of events calculated back here to this data set. This gives us 4 out of the 5 columns that we needed for this final analysis. Next, I used a formula tool to take the total points divided by the number of events, which gave us our average points per event. And then finally, I used another sort tool just to sort on position ascending, so we get it in the same order as our top 25 leaderboard, but now we have this additional analysis of number of events and average points per event. And then finally, I threw it through another basic table tool and output it as a PDF document. And you can see that we have this report here with position, player, number of events, total points, and average points per event. Thank you for watching this solution video. I'm looking forward to see the solutions that you come up with.